Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Before we start our would you rather question for the day, would you rather always have something stuck in your teeth or have a perpetual wedgie? Let me know in the comment section down below. Our first story today comes to us from Catastrophe. Hearing aids are not equal to earbuds. Let's jump right in. This happened a few years ago, around the time I was 17. I had just started working at a smallish cafe run by a well-known family in our area. I knew some people who had worked there before, and they told me for the most part, the owners were great, very chill and laid back when it was slow and normally weren't bad about breathing down the employees' necks. Their oldest daughter, who also helped run everything, was the only one who was very peculiar, and we'll call her Karen. I am officially diagnosed with a hearing deficiency, not enough to be considered deaf, but more than hard of hearing, so I wear hearing aids. My first day before we opened, my coworkers asked me if they could do anything else to help me out, and we eventually started talking about the hearing aids in general. While talking about everything, I mentioned they had Bluetooth capabilities, so I could play music through them. Not that I would, but I could. Karen had been in the room at the time and said, "You can't wear those, no earbud policy," and tapped on the policies paper on the wall. I protested, explaining they're hearing aids and not earbuds, and that I wouldn't be using them to listen to any music while I was working. Her reasoning was I didn't need them because I wasn't considered fully deaf, and I was doing this to get around the no earbud policy, directly quoting when I said they could play music. I can't wear them? Okay, let's see how this goes. Placed them into the case in my bag and started my shift. I couldn't understand my trainer, couldn't hear the customers, couldn't hear when orders were called to be sent out. Things were going extremely slow. A couple of warmed pastries burnt since I wasn't able to hear the timers. Simple sentences had to be repeated multiple times, with people basically yelling at me just for me to be able to piece a few words together. I guess the cherry on top was me ignoring one of the owners when she tried speaking to me. Karen came up to me and tried addressing me about it until she finally realized what was going on after she had repeated herself 5 times. By the end of that shift, I was allowed to wear my hearing aids, no questions asked. Gotta be honest, if I was in that situation, I probably wouldn't tell anybody that they had Bluetooth capabilities because that could just be my little secret. At any time, I could be listening to nice and quiet music, not loud enough that I wouldn't be able to hear anything else going on around me, but it would make the day go by a heck of a lot faster. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from Weir Cho. Won't replace a brand new broken lawnmower, but will let me return and reorder? Okay, let's jump right in. So I bought a riding lawnmower a few years ago from a big home store. I paid for delivery, and upon said delivery, it didn't start. The delivery truck had left by the time I had gotten gas in it and figured this out, so I called the store. I explained that my brand new just delivered today lawnmower was not starting, and immediately the person on the phone asked me if I purchased the extended warranty. I hadn't, so they told me it would cost $100 to have them come get the lawnmower and then however much more the repairs were. Mind you, this was brand freaking new. In my mind, they should bring me a new one to replace the one that didn't work upon delivery. No matter how much I argued, this worker was sticking to their story. I quickly changed my tactic and asked what the return policy was. As long as a return was initiated within 30 days, I could have a full refund, including the cost of delivery, and the store would come pick up the mower for me at no additional cost. So I pointed out that the store wouldn't replace my non-working item by taking one trip to my house to pick up the non-working one and bring me one that worked, and instead would make 2 trips to pick up the one that didn't work and then bring me the new one I purchased the second time as a totally different transaction. The worker said yes, and when I tried to point out how that made no sense, he didn't want to hear it. So right then and there, I initiated a refund. I then immediately ordered a new one and had him set up the delivery date. After that date was set, we had to schedule the date for pickup of the old mower, and I made myself unavailable for any date other than the delivery date for the new one. So even though he had insisted they wouldn't just bring me a replacement mower and pick up the first one, they were now doing just that, but with the additional paperwork of processing a return and additional paperwork for delivery of the new mower. The manager called me later that day to apologize for the hassle, and they ended up waiving my delivery fee. In all honesty, that person you talked to on the phone probably knew that their whole policy was BS, but there was nothing they could do about it, and they spend their whole day talking to people who have a problem with that policy, and they know that they can't do anything to change it. One thing they could have done to make that situation better, though, is just to simply admit, yes, I know it's silly, but that's how our system works, so it's the way we have to do it. This next story comes to us from Neville's Rememberall. Only want men to make your meal? Fine by me. Let's jump right in. I worked as a cook and carryout for an Italian restaurant for several years. Normally, I would work in the kitchen during the week and carry out on the weekends. My forte was cook. I was fast, detail-oriented, and prided myself on making the perfect dish. In the 5+ years I worked there, I was the only female ever in the kitchen. On Tuesdays, I was always in the kitchen and another worker, Eric, worked carryout. Every Tuesday, a customer would come in and order the same thing. The order was very specific and went against how meals are typically prepared. Things like they only wanted 2 meatballs instead of the standard 3. The meatballs must be separate from the spaghetti in an aluminum dish, not a styrofoam cup. A small scoop of sauce on the meatballs, etc. The meal was so specific, I knew it by heart and always made it. The cheapskate owner of the restaurant would have been pissed if he knew how much styrofoam and aluminum tins I had to use to make the order by splitting all the food out, but I didn't mind. Well, one day Eric decided to switch to serving in the main dining room to make more money. The first Tuesday he switched, the managers didn't have anyone for carryout, so they asked me to cover. As I was working that night in carryout, an old man in a black bowler hat and tan trench coat comes in the lobby. I greet him and am about to take his order when he states, "Are there any men working today? Where's Eric?" I was confused but went and fetched Eric, and Eric took his order. I asked Eric if he was related, and he said, "No, he just feels women are incompetent and can't make his order right." I was fuming. When the order was ready, I picked it up and realized it was the specific order that comes in every Tuesday. This old man must have assumed only men work in the kitchen. Little did he know he had just come face to face with the 5-foot, 100-pound female that had perfectly made his order every Tuesday for years. I handed him his order without a word. I was so angry by his sexism that I didn't want to speak and say something that would make me lose my job. I regret not saying anything to this day. He inspected his order and rolled his eyes when he spied the meatballs in styrofoam instead of an aluminum dish, but left without a word. After that, I decided if he wanted men to handle his stupid order, then I'll go with it. I got approval from the manager to proceed with my plan, and male coworkers jumped in to help. I asked Eric to not help him anymore since he was familiar with the old man's order. Besides, he needed to focus on serving anyways. Only other men took his order. I asked the male cooks to make his meal. I didn't tell the special instructions. No more special treatment with separate tins. He got the standard spaghetti and meatballs like everyone else. It would be what the male cheapskate owner would want after all. And no special discount codes that would credit him 50 cents for one less meatball. Only Eric and I knew the discount codes during that shift anyway. Well, every week his order was, according to him, wrong. He started to demand the order be remade per his requirements. He would be denied his requests, citing the cheapskate owner was cracking down on product waste. He got even more upset when he discovered he wasn't getting the discount codes anymore. After several Tuesdays of this charade, he finally asked to speak to a manager to voice his dissatisfaction. He asked, "Where is the man that was making my meal?" And the manager responded, "Oh, she quit." Looking back, I should have instead popped up around the corner and said something like, "I am no man," a la Lord of the Rings or something, but that was the best response we thought of at the time. Unfortunately, he didn't have an epiphany or realization that I hoped for. The manager just said he scoffed and took his food and left. He quit coming a couple weeks later, never heard from him again. Should have been more respectful to the female cook. Does anybody else get the vibe that this guy would be the kind of person who would say, well, I only want men working on my order when I'm at your restaurant, but then they'd go back home and when their wife is making dinner, they wouldn't take part in it at all? Yeah, there's still some people from that generation around, but as those generations pass on, fortunately, the world is changing for the better. This next story comes to us from Aubergine. This is the price now. Let's jump right in. So I'm not sure how malicious this is, but I thought it might be quite fun to post. I used to work in a Cath Kidston shop in London, which for those that don't know the brand, CK is very floral vibes, bags, accessories, and very classically British style. When I moved to London, I joined a CK store from a different one, having already been a supervisor. This was a busier shop though, so I started at sales assistant until the following year I was a supervisor again. The day in question was a Sunday, and I was the only manager on shift. A woman came in with a steep sense of purpose radiating off of her. She came to the till and laid down a quite frankly manky child's backpack. CK does these quite cute child-sized backpacks in all sorts of patterns like flowers, dinosaurs, anything. This one had looked into the abyss and stared back. It was so discolored. There was also some brown stuff scraped along the sides as well, which was delightful. The woman proceeds to tell me that the bag is broken, and she wrongly assumes I'm going to be extremely happy to help her. Even I cannot work miracles and return a bag which is definitely a few years old. It roughly goes like this. I'm sorry, this is quite an old pattern, so I won't be able to do a return or exchange for you today. But I just bought this a few months ago. It shouldn't have broken already. It's quite possible you bought this at an outlet store, in which case you need to go to an outlet store to return, as the prices would not match. No, I bought this at full price. It was £30. I'm sure this pattern is from 2014 or so it would not have been in store recently. No, I need a refund or exchange. I bought it very recently. Do you have a receipt for a refund? No, I bought it recently, but I don't keep receipts. Can't you just take my word for it? I cannot process a refund without a receipt, unfortunately. It's policy. At this point, I realize this bag is going to come out to pennies if I find the code for it somewhere inside. But without a receipt, I can offer you an exchange or a gift card. Why didn't you say that earlier? Okay, well, for an exchange that you say is broken, I need to take the bag and record it as faulty. Wait, you're taking it? If it is faulty, it needs to go to the warehouse and be looked at. And I can find the product code to find out how much money you can get for your exchange. Well, okay, if this gets me an exchange, you can take it. At this point, I gingerly take this bag that is literally disgusting and open it up to try and find a SKU code on the label. This is the only way to get an accurate record of what the bag is when there is no receipt. Luckily, this bag had a SKU code, and by the first number, I already knew it was an old bag. I type in the SKU into the till, and this bag comes in at a whopping £5. She literally does not believe me that it is only £5. She walks around to my side and looks at me typing it in. She looks at the bag to read the numbers and tells me I can't read numbers. I type it in at least 20 times, and each time it comes out at £5. The lady literally stands there debating with me for another 5 minutes about the price. She is clearly fuming it's only £5, and is trying to figure out whether she wants to even do the exchange. She ends up buying 2 packets of hair clips and complains to me that this will make her daughter cry. I say thank you so much for coming, and then proceed to show everyone I work with the backpack covered in poo. I got to thinking on this one. I think this person probably had their kid come home from school, realized that their bag was covered in poop and didn't want to deal with it, so they just said, well, I'm gonna take it back to the store and make it their problem. I have huge respect for everybody who works in retail when they have to put up with people like this on a regular basis. This next story comes to us from Bald Goddess. Eye doctor. Let's jump right in. I've been wearing glasses since I was 9 years old, nearsighted, and my eyesight deteriorated pretty steadily until my late teens. When I was 13, I went to see a new eye doctor who opened up shop in the same medical center as the dentist my mom worked for. When I was asked by the eye doctor to read the eye chart without my glasses, I told him that I couldn't see anything other than the top 2 lines. Everything else was gray blurs, which was true. He told me to just try the 3rd line. So I took a breath and guessed every single letter. He turned on the lights and said I had done pretty good for a girl. Now, I don't know how he was expecting me to react with that comment, but I have always had a tendency to give people who have made me angry the bare minimum they ask for. If you don't specifically tell me to do something, you are not going to get the results you are wanting. And that is what happened next. For everyone who has ever had to have eye exams for corrective lenses, I am sure you are familiar with the test where you are given the same image in front of each eye, and you are supposed to tell the eye doctor when the 2 images merge. Well, he told me to let him know when the images merged, and then he started turning dials to make the images come closer together. I sat there seething, watching the images come closer together before they disappeared rather than merge. I never told him when they disappeared. I mean, he specifically said to tell him when the 2 images became one. And I am just a teenage girl, so who am I to know that the images won't magically reappear and become one image, right? After several minutes of him clicking dials with no response from me, the doctor stopped and asked me if the images had come together yet. I, very innocently, asked him, what images? The images were gone. He got very exasperated and asked me what I meant the images were gone. I told him the images had disappeared before they became one image. I can still hear the sigh he made when I remembered this event. He reset everything and told me to tell him the minute the images disappeared. I complied, and afterwards, when I was walking out of the eye doctor's office with my mom and a referral to a specialist, my mom asked me what happened because the eye doctor had made some comments to her about my attitude. I told her what happened and she was not happy. However, since he was a friend of her boss, she couldn't complain directly to him. So she decided to not take me back, but instead congratulated me for how I handled the situation. Okay, how do we get from reading a chart to that's pretty good for a girl? What? Do only penises have eyes now? I did think of something funny after this one if I ever had to go to the optometrist and get my eyes checked. I'd get somebody I know to go in for a free eye exam first and take a picture of the eye chart for me so that I could memorize it before I go in. And then when they ask me to read the chart, I'd keep on going down the chart and even read the little copyright information at the bottom just to see the stunned look on the optometrist's face. Check out all 5 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.